Hello and welcome to Glory Be, interesting people and how they pray.
Each week we chat with interesting people about their lives, their work, and how they pray. I'm Sharon Hanish.
And I'm Mike Malcolm.
Our guest today is Mark Ohnesorge. Mark is a captain with the Tulsa Police Department here in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and is currently assigned to the Police Academy over recruitment and training. He grew up in a military family, traveling all over the world before graduating from high school in Enid, Oklahoma. Mark holds a Bachelor of Science in Mathematics from Oklahoma State University and a Master of Science in Criminal Justice from the University of Oklahoma. He taught in public schools for 1 year before joining the Tulsa Police Department in 2008. Mark has held many positions within the Tulsa Police Department and has helped develop numerous classes for law enforcement training. He is a commissioner on Mayor G.T. Bynum's Greater Tulsa Area Hispanic and Latinx Affairs Commission and serves on the Church of St. Mary pastors team. Mark is married to his lovely wife, Maggie, and they have 6 kids who keep them very busy with school, church, and sports. And we are so delighted to have Mark here. We know Mark well. He's very involved here at St. Mary's, and we're so happy you're here.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, 6 kids. You must have like reaction times, like just being able to reach stuff, catch all the balls, a child who...
Yeah, sometimes I surprise myself with my spidey senses, but yeah.
That is great.
So you wanted to mention before we got started.
Yeah, I just wanted to, most of my career obviously has been in law enforcement with the Tulsa Police Department, but I don't speak for them on the podcast or anything like that. Everything that we're going to talk about is my personal life and opinions and history. So
yeah,
fair enough.
We're so happy we want to hear all about it.
15 years with the TPD.
I know, it flew by. It really feels like it was not that long ago that I was walking through the academy.
Yeah.
So you taught for 1 year.
Right.
And then you thought, I got to get out of here. And what sparked your interest in policing, working for the police department?
Probably Law and Order is going to be
That's hilarious.
where my interest
TV
started.
Show?
Right, yeah. So I guess when I was growing up, my parents just kind of always had Law and Order on in the evenings or whenever it was playing, and it was just one of those shows that I thought was kind of cool, and I'd always watch it with my parents. And I honestly never really thought that it would influence my life or career choices until I was in college, and I started thinking about what my next step was. And as you mentioned, I got my Bachelor's of Science in Mathematics, and toward the end of my collegiate life, I realized real world was coming pretty quick, and I had to figure something out. And the, I guess, easiest option for me was teaching. It was something that my mom was a teacher. She'd done it for 20-some years, and I thought that was kind of in my blood. My dad, actually, we were talking about earlier about people who have bachelor's degrees in math. My dad has a bachelor's degree in math, and so that was also kind of something that not came easily to me, but was more natural than most subjects in school. And I thought that would be kind of a fun career choice to choose. And so I was kind of bouncing between teaching, military service, like my dad was, and then service to the public. And I decided to try both, teaching, and at the same time I was looking into public service or law enforcement. And something that sparked my interest about TPD, not to get too recruity on you guys, but I liked that they required a bachelor's degree. I thought that was something that other law enforcement agencies in the nation don't, and I thought that spoke highly of the standards and of the type of training, the type of people that Tulsa was attracting. And so I looked, I guess, at TPD at the same time I was in public schools, and I was actually just I don't want to, I guess, take all of our time talking about this, but I was kind of an emergency substitute. So I graduated with my degree in math, and I think it was within a couple weeks, my old high school called me, and they were like, hey, we know you just graduated, you have a degree in math, we just lost a math teacher, can you come help? And so I said absolutely, and went and taught at the high school that I graduated from 4 years prior, which made it really awkward at times, teaching alongside the teachers that I had just had a few years before. But it was also really kind of cool. One of the teachers, one of the math teachers was one of the people that inspired me to kind of follow a STEM type degree. And so I thought that was kind of neat to teach alongside her and to help She was the calculus teacher, and so I was teaching, I think, Algebra 1, Algebra 2, something like that. And so when she had to leave, she would have me come in and teach calculus, and that was kind of the highlight, I guess, of my teaching career, was subbing for my calculus teacher.
Wow.
When and there were you married? When did you meet? Did you and Maggie meet at Oklahoma State?
So we met kind of. We were very early in the online dating platform, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But we didn't meet on any specific dating site. We were really cool, and we had blogs when we were in college.
Yeah.
And so we kind of met that way. And what was interesting was she had just kind of met my brother online through our blogs. And about that same time, I was asked to speak to a group of confirmation students at my parish in Enid. And they asked for kind of a male and female's perspective on going to college and continuing your faith life in college. And so Matt was kind of like, hey, I just met this girl online. Maybe you can take her and see if she's interested in speaking with you at this thing. And of course, Maggie is a very smart woman. And so she said, I'm not meeting anyone who I met online and in real life. But kind of fortuitously, our parents knew each other because they were both special education teachers in the school systems. So she talked to her mom. She kind of mentioned it. Her mom was like, oh, yeah, I know their mom. They're normal. You can meet them in real life. Yeah. And so we gave this talk together to a group of confirmation kids my sophomore year of college, I think it was. And I mean, we had chemistry as soon as we met. Like, I'd met her just off base because I had to escort her on to base because I was still a military dependent at the time. And from when I met her to throughout our afternoon that day, really just kind of felt like we'd known each other for a long time. We were easy to talk to. And after that, I was kind of like, I don't want this to be the last time we see each other. So we started kind of seeing each other a little bit over that spring and summer. And then we started dating that summer, and that was it.
And you got married right out of school?
I got married. Actually, I was in the middle of the police academy when I was married. So we got engaged right when I graduated. She still had about 2 years left of school because she was in pharmacy school, and that's longer than getting a Bachelor's of Science in math. So she had about 2 years left. I asked her to marry me. She said yes, thankfully. And it was about a year and a half after that we got married. So.
Wow. And so then she supports you as you go to the police academy.
So she was still in school at that time. Like, she was in her, I can't remember what they call it, rotations, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so she was working in pharmacies here in Tulsa, but still paying tuition to go to school. And so fortunately, Tulsa pays throughout the academy, and so I was able to support both of us.
So if you get into the Tulsa Academy, it's free.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We pay you to go to the academy, so you're an employee at that point.
Oh, no. I guess I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
It's not like getting a degree where you have to pay.
No, we pay you through training, and then pay you when you're in field training, and then you get a raise when you're actually a police officer doing it on your own. So.
Okay, so you are now a captain at the Tulsa Police Department.
Yeah.
You sent me your bio. You've done so many things. I wanted to ask you about all of it. But do you have a favorite? You've been a detective. You've taught. You were even started out, I guess, as driving a police car and getting tickets or whatever.
Sure. Yeah.
But anyway,
You've been on TV.
I've given many tickets. Yeah.
What do you have a favorite thing that you've enjoyed?
I do. Probably my favorite thing was my time as a detective. Yeah. That was really, really fun. That's kind of what initially grabbed my attention to police work was wanting to become a detective. And I was able to do that. I think I had 3 years on the police department when I applied to the Major Crimes Unit, and I was accepted. And so that was a huge dream of mine, I guess, that came true.
How Law and Order is that?
That's what I was going to ask you. Tell us,
It's
Mark.
It was not super Law and Order.
Okay.
I hate to say that the TV show was not as realistic as I'd hoped. Mm-hmm. No, it was a lot of fun, and it was something that really I worked toward in my early career. But then once I got in, that's what I lived, ate, and breathed was detective work, and so it was a ton of fun at the time. I did that for about 5 years. Yeah. So, and then toward the end of my time there, I kind of I don't know if I realized at some point, I woke up and thought about it, but I'd always wanted to be part of the leadership of the organization, and so I started trying to promote, and so that's worked out for me.
Yeah. And do you enjoy teaching? Is that what you're doing right now? What exactly are you doing right now?
So, I get that question a lot because people are like, "What do you do?" Yeah. So right now, my day-to-day is spent in meetings and in strategizing and kind of figuring out how to recruit in today's environment. So that's kind of what most of my day-to-day is. I'm also, I guess, some of my day-to-day is also taken up by the incident management team because I'm also the commander of the incident management team for Tulsa. And so I do a lot of kind of emergency planning and building plans and teams of trying to, I guess, I'm trying to put into layman's terms, but really just trying to ensure that the city is ready for any type of disaster that hits us and that police services and fire services and everything can continue throughout those disasters.
How does the academy get its curriculum? Is there kind of a national guideline that you guys can subscribe to? Or
so there's state guidelines,
yeah. Okay.
And so we can build off of that. Yeah. And the state does have like a certain number of hours. I think it's like a 16-week academy is kind of the basic academy for the state. We build on top of that, and so we end up with about a 30-week academy here. Yeah. So the officers that you see out in Tulsa are really some of the best trained in the state and some of the best trained in the nation. Yeah. And so a lot of what we do is, I guess my job is mostly their backgrounds. Yeah. And so I run a team of some fantastic officers that recruit, and then once they recruit, they go through the testing process, they help them through the background process, and then once we select them for the academy, that's when we hand them over to the training side, and the training side brings them to the academy through field training, and then make sure that they're ready to be police officers.
Yeah. You know, I read one of your interviews where you mentioned the shootings at St. Francis Hospital.
Sure.
And that you went to, maybe you should explain, you went to a conference and people would approach you because we did have such a good reputation because of how we handled that. Were you involved in that shooting? Or?
So, yes. Well, yes and no, I guess. I was not one of the officers in the building. In fact, by the time I had arrived, we had plenty of officers that were inside St. Francis and that were actually waiting to get in to help out. So I assumed my role at the time I was the deputy incident commander or deputy incident management team commander. And so I linked up with our SWAT team commander and helped take care of everything that was not acutely tactical. So Mike is our SWAT team commander. He helped ensure that everything inside the building was safe and that people were safe and that we can get them out. At that point, it kind of became my team, which we would take the people that came out of the building and either triage them as witnesses or send them over to the Family Reunification Center or things like that. So,
okay. So why was that so important in terms of from the outside looking in, like across the country, people are like Tulsa handled that well?
Yeah. Unfortunately, what happened was St. Francis happened about a week after Uvalde happened.
Oh, that's right.
And so it was a really unfortunate juxtaposition of how law enforcement approaches active shooting situations. And Tulsa, I'm proud to say, did a great job for the circumstances they had. The first officers on scene went in without hesitation, did what they needed to do, and that was really what people latched onto as how Tulsa did well. And those guys all fell back on their training when they went in the building. They did a fantastic job, and fortunately, the situation resolved before it could get any worse.
Yeah. So. How does your family, how does Maggie feel? Does she ever get nervous being married to a police officer?
I've talked to her about that a lot, and I don't think she does, really, which I think is good because that doesn't weigh on her. But sometimes I'm like, you're really not that worried about me? Like, you're really not concerned? But she kind of explained it to me one time that she said, first of all, she knows that we're pretty well trained here in Tulsa. She knows a lot of my job is, I don't know if you'd say safe, but it's controlled. And so a lot of what I do is not out there on the street, pulling cars over and going to unknown situations. But when I do, she kind of trusts that I have a solid team around me. Yeah. And I hope that that's how every Tulsa police spouse feels, that they know that they have a team of people that are all working to get everyone home. Citizens, police officers, get everybody home. So
you are Catholic.
Right.
We've established
that's what we're here for.
And you're a public servant. And so were you as a teacher. Mm-hmm. But then also you've got brothers and sisters in similar roles with firefighting and emergency, like medical first responders, et cetera. What is that connection between being Catholic and being a public servant? Because it seems so strong.
Yeah, and I got that question a lot, especially when I was a detective, and you have to walk into crime scenes or things that normal people don't have to see,
right?
And that you can kind of, I guess, collect a lot of trauma that way. And so I always kind of fell back on my faith life as the anchor in all those situations. Oftentimes I'd find myself kind of praying for the victim or the person that I was there to investigate, or the crime that occurred. And so I think that I think that's a very strong kind of a spiritual connection that I didn't really consider before I started walking into those roles.
It's just a common pattern. When I was in seminary, I had so many classmates who were, I was a cop for 3 years, or 5 years or 8 years or something like that. And then some discerned out and went back to law enforcement or firefighting,
I guess that's that connection is maybe a lot closer than we realize.
Yeah. Well, you had been the leader of the parish's stewardship council for, 8 years or
7
6
years? Something like that.
Long time. And that seems to make sense, this looking at what God's given me and how am I going to return it back to the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
All that. So, you're a shining model of that.
No.
So,
before we move to because I want to ask you one more question, because I'm interested in this commission that you serve on for the mayor, the Latin. How did you get invited to do that, and what does that do? What is it called?
It's the mayor's Greater Tulsa Area Hispanic and Latinx Affairs Commission. So, when I was a patrol captain and I worked out at Mingo Valley Division, we have a large Hispanic population in East Tulsa. And I'm happy to say my boss at the time, who's also a parishioner, Mark Homerhauser Jr., he and I worked to forge a lot of relationships in East Tulsa with the Hispanic community, because really they're a huge part of the citizens that we serve out in East Tulsa. But they're also inclined not to trust police. And so that was something that we worked to overcome, because a lot of that is having to build those relationships and overcome those feelings that other people have about not being able to trust the police officers that serve them. So we worked with several councils in that area. We worked with a lot of the leadership of East Tulsa, and I think that was kind of being noticed that we were creating those relationships. And I was approached by, I don't even remember who it was. I think it may have been Mark, who asked me if I'd be interested in serving on this commission with a team of essentially Hispanic leaders throughout Tulsa. And so I agreed. I thought that it'd be a really cool experience. And what I found is we all have a lot of similar beliefs or a lot of similar motivations for being in the room together, and all of us are looking to improve the lives of all Tulsans, and including maybe I don't know if especially is the right word, but with a definite flavor or flair of catering toward Hispanic communities. So offering translations, offering different public safety meetings, public safety forums, things like that is always something that we try to do.
And are you Hispanic from the Philippines, or your parents from the Philippines?
No, so my mom is first generation Mexican American.
Okay.
So, and my dad is German, which is why my last name is Ohnesorge. And so people kind of get confused when they see me. But yeah, so my mom's side is the Hispanic side of our family. And so growing up, we'd always have, and they're both very strong Catholic families, which is also kind of interesting. But growing up, it was very interesting to have my mom's side of the family, and we'd go to parties on her side, which were always exciting. And full of piñatas and lots of fun. I was always one of the taller members of the family on her side, which was also fun. And then we'd go to my dad's side of the family, and it was much more formal and much more like, sit down dinners. And I was always one of the shorter members of the family on that side. So it kind of worked out that way. But yeah.
Well, speaking of, so you grew up Catholic. As we transition into it's Glory Be Interesting People and How They Pray. So as we make our way into the How You Pray part of the podcast, you grew up Catholic. Mike and I, of course, think of you as one of our devoted parishioners. You're also still involved. You were involved in stewardship. Now you're involved on the pastor's team. You've been very involved in the school. Is there a particular type of prayer that draws your heart? I know you mentioned that you have an hour of adoration over at St. John's Hospital. You have a large family. Does your family pray together? Talk to us about your faith life and why that's important and how you pray.
All right. So I think that was like 15 questions. And I'm going to try to pare those
Write
down.
a short dissertation for us.
I'll start with St. John's, because adoration really kind of became the center of my prayer life over the past several years. So I think it was about 14 years ago that I started my hour at St. John's. And at the time, it was like 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening. I'd go and sit an hour before the Blessed Sacrament, and now it's 3 o'clock a.m. on Sundays. So I think, it's gotten progressively later as it's gone on. But and so that early on, I kind of felt like that was a centering of my life, and so I feel like that every week, and it is sometimes a struggle or a sacrifice, because on Sunday morning it's hard for me to wake up to make it to 10:30 Mass, which is why now we're 5 p.m. Saturday Mass goers. But so it's been challenging to continue to have an overnight hour. But I also found that it was if my week feels off if I don't go. Yeah. So, like, for example, this last weekend, I was out of town because I had my 20th high school reunion, and I felt like my week didn't start off the way it should, because my week normally starts off with an hour before the Blessed Sacrament. So that's kind of a centering, I guess, moment for me for my prayer life. And what I normally do there is I do a lot of spiritual reading. And so I generally kind of cling on to a saint or someone that I revere, respect. I recently reread the biography of Stanley Rother because I feel like he's a really good figure, especially in Oklahoma, for us to look up to. And my wife and I kind of made a pilgrimage to the shrine of Stanley Rother in Oklahoma City this summer. And so that kind of re-sparked my interest in learning more about him. And I'd read his biography a few years ago, but I decided to kind of reread it. Padre Pio, who's one of my guys, I read about him frequently. And so I guess spiritual reading has a lot to do with my prayer life as well. In terms of with my family, we in the mornings we do have a prayer that we try to hit with the kids as often as we can, and it's the "Good Morning, Dear Jesus" prayer that they learned, I think, in preschool, and we still kind of continue that, and we talk about prayer intentions and things like that. And then in the evenings during dinner, and this is something I actually stole from Jane Bender, when Maggie and I we used to go and speak to her theology class. And what they would do on the Mondays after a weekend is they'd talk about their peaches and their pits from the weekend. So like the good part of their weekend and their bad part. And so we started doing that with our kids. We thought that was kind of a fun thing for us to do and get the kids to talk to us a little bit. And over the years, it's evolved now, and it's just peaches, because we don't want to hear about anything negative in their day. We just want to hear what the good part of their day is. And if it's something that they need help with, then we do peaches and intentions, and so we'll ask about an intention for them. And so that's kind of a way that we try to remind our kids to be grateful in every day, no matter what happens in school. There's always a piece of their day that they can count as a peach, and it's not you cannot give the answer that there was no peach that day, because we'll always ask them to look for something that was good, something that we could be thankful for. And then we talk about prayer intentions. So that's kind of, I guess, the center point of prayer and with our family. Something that I do personally is, and I think I've talked about this before with some ministries at St. Mary's, when I have time in the mornings, I'll start my day with a rosary in the car. And that's a fairly easy thing for me to do on the way to work is I have a couple rosaries in my car already. Oftentimes I just do it on my fingers, and I'll say a rosary on the way to work. Nowadays, a lot of times my mornings are covered with phone calls because you're never really detached from your work.
You can't clock out.
Right. Yeah. You always have a phone on you or something.
Yeah.
And so I'll try to at least get a decade in or get a few prayers in on my way into work. So, I guess I don't know if I answered all your questions.
I think that was a great answer.
You mentioned earlier in the podcast about, sometimes when a call comes in that requires police presence, you'll come in and pray for the people impacted by that situation. Do you have a go-to prayer? Like if you only have 10 seconds, do you have a go-to?
So I usually stick to the Hail Mary because it's just kind of an easy, softball prayer for me to throw in there and something I can remember really quickly. But I also, especially when I was in patrol, I favored the St. Michael prayer a lot. Yep. I enjoyed that one. I said that one frequently, either at work or right before work or things like that. So those are kind of the two that I would think about. And then sometimes if I could find a way to relate to the person that might influence a prayer that I might say or an intention that I might have for them.
Okay.
But often it was Hail Mary or the repose of their soul, so that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we should link to the St. Michael prayer. I don't know if anybody has ever, of course, a lot of people have heard the prayer, but if anybody's ever referenced it as a prayer that they use.
Oh, yeah. It's one of my favorites.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
I have St. Michael socks, too, that I wear sometimes if it's, if it's going to be a day.
Yes, to give you strength.
Yeah. So you've got the whole communion of saints represented because you got Padre Pio shirts, St. Michael socks.
Blessed Stanley Rother.
Yeah.
So
you got to keep them all together.
From what you've mentioned, starting out, when you were in college and probably before, but you've been very active. You have a rich prayer life.
I hope so, yeah.
Has there ever been a time in your life when it's been difficult to pray?
Right. Oh, yeah, all the time. So, yes, is the answer to that. And it's funny, I found that the busier I am, the harder it is to pray. And so that's also kind of centering for me because I realize there's a moment when you realize I'm too busy for my own good.
Yeah.
And so Maggie actually has been really good about that for us in the last couple of years of ensuring that we're not always driving somewhere. We're not always, dropping kids off because the kids do have a lot of activities and there's 6 of them. So we that multiplies quickly. So we kind of came up with, for better or for worse, a structure where they can have like a sport and extracurricular activity. And so we kind of limit it for them mostly so we can have more family time, more prayer time, more downtime, really, as a family. Yeah. So when especially when school kicks back up, when things start getting busier, it's harder for me to sit down and just think and pray. And so that's when I fall back on my car trips to either to work or home or wherever. So that's been a challenge for me. I thought about something when I read that question. I thought for a second, my daughter, and I don't remember if you guys were here when this happened, but when Mary was born, she had a congenital heart defect. And so
I wasn't here, but I know the story. Yeah.
And so for almost a year until she was 9 months old, we had to give her medicine twice a day. And she ended up having to have surgery at 9 months old. And that whole thing is a whole other story because we really saw God's hand in a lot of that moment. But I thought for a moment, was that hard for me to pray around then? And because there were times when I thought, this isn't fair. Why is it us? And why is it our daughter? This kind of thing. But I almost felt like it was easier to pray because I knew exactly what I was praying for, and I knew what I was talking to, what I was asking. And Father Castle at the time was our associate priest here, and he was really close to us, and he was actually at the hospital with us during her surgery. And so that was kind of, I guess, to not answer your question, because that was a really easy time for me to pray, but it was something that I thought immediately. I was like, well, I don't know why it was during a difficult situation in my life, it was easier for me to pray than during kind of the normal times of life when you just find yourself busy. So
I think that is my experience. When there's a big crisis, I immediately turn to God. But when I get in the busyness, I kind of sometimes forget. So
maybe it's human nature to turn toward him when when we're
that's a common answer. We've been doing this podcast for a while, and a lot of people say, the difficult time is the more mundane. The mundane. There's no peaks or valleys, no peaches or pits.
Right. There's always a peach. There's always
No, I know. I like that, especially for teenagers.
Oh, yeah. We have to draw it out of them sometimes.
Well, we are just about done, but we would love to pray a glory be if you'd lead us in one. But would you give us a prayer intention, something that you would want the entire world to join with you for that prayer intention?
Yeah. I would love to pray for all the victims of crime in the Tulsa area. That's something that is near to me and near to my heart. Obviously, as a police officer, also selfishly, my mother-in-law, who's also been dealing with some ailments lately. So, those are two intentions that I'd like to pray for.
Well, we'll do it. Would you lead us?
Absolutely. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Father, Son, Holy Spirit.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you guys.
Really
for
appreciate it.
Having me. I appreciate it.
Glory Be is a production of the Office of Communications at the Church of St. Mary in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I'm your producer, Mike Malcolm. See you next time.